In other words, this is a non-halachic state, and you're asking, is it usher to live here, or is it usher to make a non-halachic state? Well, presumably, it is usher to make a non-halachic state, because if the Torah says that laws are supposed to be X, Y, and Z, so to create a system where the laws are not X, Y, and Z is a violation of halacha. But I would agree with you that it is mutter for us to create a state where individuals are not punished for violating halacha. In other words, a state that maintains freedom of religion. In other words, Israel is what's called a Jewish democracy, right? So any individual has the legal right to be Jewish, to be Christian, to be atheist, to be secular. Now, let's ask that specific question. If I'm a religious Jew, would I be allowed to be part of a state that does not require Jews to practice Judaism? So here, there is a halachic argument in favor of it, and that is, when we don't have a Beis HaMikdash and we don't have a Sanhedrin, we actually don't have coercive power to punish people for Shabbos or for kashrus and the like. And the idea here is that we communicate Yiddishkeit by education, by persuasion, by example, and not by coercion. So it depends what you mean by a non-halachic state. If you mean by a non-halachic state that religion is not coerced, that is actually a good idea in this day and age. Because if you were to pass a law, let's imagine we pass like the Taliban passes laws like that. We would pass a law, let's assume we would say, anyone who desecrates Shabbos gets publicly stoned. I mean, what would happen? What would happen is there would be armed revolution. Meaning, in a time of Hester Panim, before Mashiach, you can't convey Torah by coercion. You have to convey Torah in a sweet way of persuasion. So in that sense, we could have a non-halachic state. But if you're talking about a state which in itself is doing things against halacha, that's a very different thing. So it depends on issue by issue by issue. You'd have to identify it. You know, the first chief rabbi of the state of Israel, not Rav Kook. Rav Kook died before there was a state of Israel. But the first chief rabbi was the grandfather of the president of Israel, same name, Rabbi Yitzchak Breitowitz. And Rabbi Yitzchak Breitowitz was an enormous Talmid Chacham. He was kind of Rabbi Yashiv's mentor, not Rebbe necessarily, but mentor. He guided Rabbi Yashiv. He made Rabbi Yashiv a dayan so many years ago. And Rav Herzog was brilliant. He was chief rabbi of Ireland, of all places. And he didn't go to yeshiva, but he was a Baki in Bavli Yerushalmi and everything. And Rav Herzog wanted to do something, a very ambitious plan. He wanted to kind of have svarim that show how do you run a modern state in accordance with halacha. Meaning, how do you have a police department in accordance with halacha, an army, a fire department, national security apparatus? I mean, there are a lot of things that have to be in operation 24/7. So what is it? Do you rely on Goyim? Is that Hashem's kavanah? In other words, what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want us to do in running a modern country in accordance with halacha? In truth, there are very few makaris on this, because for most of our history, we weren't in that situation. So most halacha focuses on individual rules. What do I do? You know, how do I keep Shabbos? But it doesn't focus on things on the governmental level. So Rav Herzog wanted svarim to be written, Talmidei Chachamim, to work on how do you create a kosher fire department, a kosher police department, a kosher national security thing. What is pikuach nefesh? What is not pikuach nefesh? Right? Is working on Shabbos for national security called pikuach nefesh. And it didn't get that far. One Rav Eliezer Waldenberg did write 3 volumes called Hilchas Medina, which explores a lot of these questions, not all of them. But once again, now it's dated already because it goes back to the 1950s. Technology changes. So the issue you're raising is an important issue. It's an issue that people think about but we don't have a lot of halachic writing on it, surprisingly little halachic writing, because for Dorei Doros, halacha was focusing on yechidim, it was not focusing on governmental institutions.